So today we are going to talk about TestNG, and there are lots of things which we are going to discuss and all. So let's go step by step. Alright. So the first thing is, why do we need TestNG? Alright. The thing is, when we build a framework, okay, when we have multiple test cases which have to be executed, then what happens is that suppose this is the example which I always give people, that these are the test cases which have to be executed, and they have to be executed in a particular order, one after another, right? Maybe you have the guys, please keep your mics on mute. Maybe you have the requirement that you want to run these test cases serially, okay, or you want to run them parallelly. Alright, parallelly on different machine using Selenium grid. Or sometimes what happens is that you want to run like this, you want to skip a particular test case. Okay. Moreover, you would want that the data in the test cases should be read from an Excel file or a properties file. We saw how to read Excel and properties file yesterday, right? Okay. Or sometimes a text file as well. Okay. Apart from that, you would want that you should be generating better reports, okay, which are HTML reports and all, having all the details. Right. You need the logs inside the reports. Logs means, they will define what happened at every moment when the script was running. Suppose the script runs for 10 hours. So you need someone to tell you that what happened at each and every moment when the script was running for 10 hours. So for that we require logs, right? And apart from that, you would want to integrate this complete thing with Jenkins, right? You want to use a Maven project. Okay, there are lots of requirements. It's not just about Selenium, it's about a lot of other things. Selenium is just in this blue box. Selenium will only help you to interact the browsers. It will not help you to read the data or generate reports and all. Okay, so to facilitate this, we use a centralized controller. This centralized controller is known as TestNG, or it is also known as JUnit. Okay, right. And what it does is that it reads the data from the properties file or the Excel file, right? It generates reports and logs. It helps you integrate the project with Maven and Jenkins. So after reading the data, it calls test cases in a certain order of execution, right? So it is like a centralized thing, a centralized kind of controller. People also use BDD Cucumber over here, okay, to control the flow of the test cases and all, everything, right? So right now we are learning TestNG. TestNG is simply a testing framework. It is not just used for Selenium, it's a unit testing framework, right? Because of its good capabilities, we can use it with Selenium. I am not teaching you JUnit in this class, because JUnit is not as good as TestNG. TestNG has got better features. It helps you to incorporate grid very easily in your project. Okay, so let us look at TestNG. Right. So the first thing is that you need to install TestNG inside Eclipse as a plugin. Okay. To install TestNG as a plugin, you need to go to Google and type over here TestNG Eclipse. Right. And it is installed as a plugin inside Eclipse. You can go to the first link out here, and over there you can click on the link, install the plugin, and then basically what you need to do is that this is the URL. Okay, this is the URL. Take this URL and I'll give you on the chat and WebEx everywhere. And you need to go to Eclipse, go to help, install new software, right? And you can hit the URL, hit the enter button, and you can click on TestNG and click on next. After pasting the URL over here, hit the enter button of the keyboard. Okay, then you will get TestNG. You select TestNG from here and click on next, and it will be installed as a plugin inside Eclipse. Okay, right. So this is how it works. Fine. Moreover, you can actually validate whether it is installed or not. You can go to Window, Show View, and you can go to Other, and under Java you will see TestNG coming up. That means it is installed. Your Eclipse might restart during the installation process, right? So let me create a new Java project today, and I'll call it day 13 underscore TestNG. So today we'll talk about TestNG out here, how to build test cases and all everything. Okay, so this is my source folder. Inside the source folder, I'll right click on it. I'll make a new package. Package is like a folder inside a folder. Okay, inside the source folder, I've made a package known as test cases. Right. Okay. Now inside the test cases package, I'll create a new class. Right. I'll create a new class known as, say, a very simple class, a login test. Right. Fine. So in TestNG, what happens is that you can build test cases. Right. You can build test cases. You can build test cases like this: @test public void do login. Okay, and you can, this is an annotation. Okay, this means that this thing is a test case. Okay, @test signifies that this function is a test case, right? And you move your mouse over this and you will see the option to add the TestNG library. Fine. And there is no main function in TestNG like you have a main function in regular Java programs, right? You add the TestNG library, it will be added in your project out here. You see that TestNG library is added, right? Now you move your mouse over this and you import the test annotation, right? And now you can print anything inside it. Do login test. To run this, you can right click on the Java file and you'll get the option run as TestNG test. If you have installed the plugin of TestNG, you'll get the option run as TestNG test. When you run it, you will see that total test runs are 1, failures are 0, skips are 0. Right. You can also regularly run it from the run button. It will run perfectly fine. And apart from this, you will see a small section over here in Eclipse generated. Right. If you go to the results, you'll see that login test, it has passed. Green sign means that it has passed. Right. Apart from that, if you refresh this project, right click on the project and click on the refresh button, you will see a test output folder. If you expand this, you will see the default HTML reports generated. Okay, this is index.html, right? This is the default HTML report. You can right click on index.html, go to the properties. This is the path of index.html on your hard drive. Copy this path and you can open it in a browser, right? So you will get the default TestNG reports. These are the ones. These are not so impressive, not so good. Okay, the main motive for us is to generate better reports as well. Better reports like these. Hold on. These are extent reports. Okay, I'll open any one of them and show you. Okay, extent reports, they look something like this. Okay, they have the test cases out here. Each and every test has a description that what happened at every moment when the test was running. Okay, right. And in case that it gives the start time and the end time of the test case as well. Okay, you can change the look and feel of the report as well, and it can also embed the screenshots of the errors and all everything inside the reports, right? You can also get the, if you enable the dashboard from this link, you can also get the graphical format of the reports and all everything. Okay, so this is what the extent report is. We will be seeing how to generate it. It is far better than this. Moreover, there is another report known as XSLT reports. We will also see how to generate those XSLT reports. Right, now moving ahead. So this was a simple scenario in which I had this simple test, right, and I executed it and printed do login test. It got printed out here as well. Fine. Now you can actually have a single test case file having multiple test cases as well. Okay, you can create a new class over here and I will call it, for example, a send mail test. Okay, it is very simple. It is not a very big deal, TestNG. You should know how to configure things. That's it. Suppose I make @test annotation and a function like a test case like public void login. Okay, so this test case will have the Selenium code which will log you inside the application. You have to import the test annotation. Alright, then you have got another test case, public void say do send mail. Fine, what happens is that this will be actually sending an email, and then you have the third test case which is say logout. Okay, so I will print inside it that logging in, then sending mail, then logging out. Okay, right, when I run this file, it will run. Total test runs will be 3 because there are 3 test annotations in this class, right? And if you scroll up, you see that it gets printed sending mail, logging in, logging out, but the order is not the order which we had expected. We had expected that first logging in should be printed because the logging, obviously before sending an email you have to log in, right? Look, the thing is, don't assume that the order of execution of the test cases would be the order in which you have written inside the file. It will never happen like this. You have to prioritize your test cases. In this case, sending mail for test case executed before logging in, right? You have to put a bracket over here and you have to write over here that the priority of this test case is 1. That means it should be executed first. Then this is 2. And then this is 3. So you have to prioritize your test cases which are there in a single Java file. Okay, so when you run it, now it will run 3 tests. See, login, send mail and logout are executed in the serial order. If you look at the console, then in the console you will see that logging in, sending mail and logging out, all 3 of them are printed. Now if you move ahead, then you can use many other annotations inside TestNG as well, right? These are not just, this is not just one annotation in TestNG. There are many predefined annotations in TestNG as well. For example, there are many of them. I'll discuss few of them because you don't need all of the annotations and all whichever are there in the TestNG. You need few of them. Okay, for example, there is one annotation @before test. Okay, I'll give it the name public void before test function. Okay, and I'll print inside it before the test. And similarly, there is another annotation known as after test. Okay, what does it do? We'll look at it, right? You import it after the test. You can write over here. Now, as the name suggests, right? Before test will be executing before executing the test, and after test will be executing after executing the test. So when you run it, sorry, when you run this test, you get the output like this, that before test is printed in the very beginning and after test is printed in the very end, and in between the test cases are executed. So maybe you have to open the browser before opening all the starting the test cases. So you can open the browser over here, or maybe you have to connect to the database before actually opening all the browsers. So you can connect to the database over here. Okay, right. So these are the annotations. These are very helpful and these are very handy. Right. There is another annotation known as @before method. Okay, I'll tell you what this does. Public void. Hold on. Just a minute. I'll just tell you what it does. Okay, it is very logical and very simple. Okay, you just have to know the concepts and that's it. Okay, right. There is another annotation known as after method. Now, if I run this, by the output you will be able to judge what these two annotations are doing. When you run this, okay, before and after annotations are executed before and after executing each and every test. Okay, before test and after test are just executed once in the beginning and in the end, but before and after annotations are executed after executing each and every test. Suppose you want to run each and every test in a separate browser, or suppose after executing each and every test you have to do some formalities or something, so you can do that in before method and after method annotations. So these are the before test, after test, when before method, after method. These are the annotations which we will be using and we will be requiring rather to use, right? Okay, and there are one or two more annotations. I'll talk about them. So basically I have talked about three annotations. I'm sorry. Right. One annotation is @test, one is after method, one is before method, one is after test and before test. So three types of annotations I have talked about. Right. So now the next thing. The next thing is that how do you validate stuff in this test? If you have an actual value and an expected value, how do you compare them? Okay. Right. Let's go back to this simple test case, login test which I had made. I'm logging in. Right. Now suppose what happens in TestNG. In TestNG you have the actual value. When you are testing, okay, you have some actual value, and actual value might come up from the application with the help of WebDriver. Okay, and you have some expected value. Right. If this expected value will come up from the application, from an Excel file or a properties file, you'll have to store it somewhere and you'll have to get this expected value and then compare it with the actual value which is from the application and pass or fail the test case. Okay, so how do you do that? You do that with the help of assert class, assertions. There is something known as assert in TestNG. Okay, right. You import the assert class. Make sure you are importing from org.testng. Sometimes people you import assert class from JUnit as well. We are not studying JUnit. We are studying TestNG. Okay, and if you write assert dot, you will get lot of functions. All the functions inside the assert class are static in nature. You can call them directly with the class name. Okay, you can write assert equals send over the actual and expected value. Okay, actual value is say this one and expected value is this. Right now both of them are equal. Okay, I am asserting equal over here. That means that both of them should be equal. If I run this, the test passes. Okay, but in case both of them they become different. Now both of them are different, and when I run it, TestNG will fail the test case. You see that failures are 1. Okay, and if you go to the results over here, you will see a red mark. It will say that I was expecting this, but I found this. Right, so you can report failures inside TestNG as well with the help of assertions. Sometimes what you have is that if you write over here assert dot, you also get a function like assert true. Okay, what does this assert true function does? It accepts a condition and there is a message. This condition should evaluate to true, then only this assertion will pass, otherwise it will fail. For example, I write over here 2 greater than 1, and this message is generally our error message, whatever error you have to throw. Hold on, you'll come to know what I am doing, what this is all about. Okay, so 2 greater than 1 is true. It is true, right? So when I run this thing will pass. Okay, right. So if I am running this, then you see that this do login comes up over here, it passes. Right. Okay. Now out here, if I write 2 greater than 11, now this is false. This is not true. So if the condition evaluates to false, then the test will fail, and whatever error message you are typing over here, or failure message, not the error message, failure message you are typing over here will come up in the reports. If I run this, then it fails. Okay, and you see that failure message is typed over here. So whatever failure message you type will be mentioned out there. Now when do we use this? We had studied the function, right, is element present earlier. So you can pass over the identifier of the element over here, and if this function tells you that fine, element is present on the page with Selenium, then it will pass. If it returns you false, then you can send a failure message that element not found on the page. Okay, right. So this is another type of assertion. If this evaluates to false, then it fails. I hope you understood this point. Right. Sometimes you reach a scenario where you are very sure that you have failed. Okay, you're sure that fine, I don't want to continue with this test. I want to fail this test. So you can simply write over here assert.fail command with the any failure message which you want. You can write over here, that will come up in the reports. Okay, where do you reach a scenario where you are very sure that you have failed? We'll come over to it. Okay, not right now, but just I'm telling you the commands. There are 3 assertion commands: assert equals, assert true, and assert fail, which we will be using. Right. Sometimes when you start the test, you don't want to run a test. You want to skip the test case. Okay, when you are batch running the tests, as I had explained you earlier, you would want that after this test, this should be executed and then this. But sometimes you don't want to execute this one. You start from this test and you end up at this one. Okay, so for that, for doing that, we use the technique of skipping the test cases. You can skip the test case by writing throw new skip exception like this. Okay, if you import it, if you throw a new skip exception, right, okay, obviously you'll have to put some condition over here, then only skip it, otherwise it will show error on the next lines, right? So what happens is that when you run this will be skipped. Okay, you'll get a yellow message skipping the test. Generally what you can do is that you can keep it like this. You can make @ before test function, before test annotation, public void before, and you can evaluate inside this function before executing the test that whether you want to skip or you want to run it. So if you want to skip it, you can throw the skip exception before the test runs, and when you run it, right, you will see that okay, the test has skipped. Okay, right. So generally you can do like this as well, because as I told you before, test gets executed in the very beginning before executing the test. Okay, right. So I hope you understood my point. How do we use assertions? How do we skip the test case? How do we build the test cases? I had built 3 test cases over here. I'd put the priorities on the test cases. I'd prioritize the test cases. Then I had these annotation functions: before test, after test, before method, after method. Right. So I hope you understood the point. Fine. Okay. Now moving ahead inside TestNG. Right. Hold on. So over here I will talk about dependencies of test cases as well. Okay. For example, um, at times what happens is that, suppose you are over here, you are having these 3 test cases. These are prioritized. Okay. Suppose in the login test, I fail the login test. Okay, some error message came up and I failed the login test. I am not able to log into the application. Okay, right. Now, if I run this thing, then it shows me an output like this, that the login test has failed. Okay, but how can you execute the send mail and the logout test? If the login test has failed, then how can you execute these 2 things? Obviously, you cannot log out or send an email if you are failing. So you have to make your test cases dependent on each other. To make the test cases dependent on each other, you can write over here, put a comma, and you can write depends on methods. You can give the name of the test, login. That means that this function is dependent on login function. If it passes, or this test is dependent on login test. And you can also put over here that this logout is also dependent on login. Okay, right, fine. So out here, if I run this, okay, if I run this, and you see that in the results, the hold on, you see that login test, it fails, and rest of the tests, they are not executing. In some of the versions of TestNG, the remaining the functions, they are skipped, the tests are skipped. Out here in my version of TestNG, it is just showing the login test to be failed. Okay, right. So I hope you got my point. Is there anybody having any questions? Is there anyone having any questions? I'm using the latest version, Sachin. I'm using the latest version. Maybe, it used to skip in my TestNG as well. Maybe I just need to restart my Eclipse or something. Okay. Now, moving ahead, right. So this is how you can make the test cases, dependent on each other as well. Right. Now, the thing is, sometimes, or rather every time, you have to batch run the test cases as well. Till now I created these two test Java files. I can execute these Java files individually. But suppose I have to run them in a batch. I have to run them together. Okay, for that we use a XML file known as testng.xml. Okay, hold on, I'll explain you. Yeah, this is testng.xml file. Right, this testng.xml file, you can keep the test cases inside it. Okay, you can write over here. The first test is login test. Okay, and you can give any name over here, but over here you have to give the fully qualified name that the login test is present in test cases package dot login test file. Okay, similarly after that you have the send mail test, and this is in test cases dot send mail test file. Okay, right. So this is the XML file. The test cases written from top to bottom will be executed in this. Okay, when you right click on this XML file and you select the option run as TestNG suite, so it will get executed from top to bottom. Login test was skipped, send mail test failed over here. The rest, see that it's showing me out here, it's showing me right now. The rest two of them are skipped. Okay, right. So this is how it works. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, right. So you can batch run the test cases with the help of this XML file testng.xml. You have to keep your test cases inside it in serial order, and you can batch run the test cases. Okay, now there is something which I want to tell you in aspect to grid as well when we will learn Selenium grid. Okay, what is grid? What is Selenium grid? In Selenium grid, we run the test cases parallelly just for one objective, that is to save time. The other objective is that you can run your tests on different environments or different operating systems. Okay, suppose you have got one PC over here. This PC is known as the hub. Hub means the central machine to which all the machines are connected, right? And to this hub we connect other machines. Okay, and the hub directs the test cases to the other machines. These are known as nodes. Okay, and the test cases, they execute parallelly on the nodes. So eventually this test ng has to, attach itself with grid system, and it has to execute the tests. Okay, right. The use of XML file over here is that you can mention all the test cases and run them in batch. Okay, let me make a simple class over here. I'll make a simple Java project known as basics of parallel execution. Fine. Suppose inside this source folder I make a new package known as test cases, and inside this test cases package I'll create a new class known as test A, then another class known as test B, and another class known as test C. Okay, inside the test A class I make the annotation @test public void test A. Okay, fine. And you add the TestNG library, you import the test annotation, and you print over here test A, and then ending test A. Right. Inside it, I'll just put a delay of 5 seconds. Fine. So what I have done, I have made a simple test class, started the test, put a delay of 5 seconds, let it execute, that means, and then end the test. Similarly in test B also, I'll make the same kind of thing, starting test B, ending test B with a delay of 5 seconds, and test C as well. Okay, so I have got 3 test cases independent of each other, which will start and put a delay of 5 seconds, right, and then end. If I have to run them in batch one after another, I will have to use this testng.xml file. Okay, I'll copy and paste this XML file under this project. Okay, and you can mention the test cases. Test A is the first one, test cases dot test A. Then after that you have got test B, test cases dot test B, and then after that test C is there, test cases dot test C. Okay, right. So I mentioned all the 3 test cases over here. When I right click on this XML and I select the option run as TestNG suite, so all these 3 will be executed in serial order. So when I run this, so you will see that test A is starting, it will wait for 5 seconds to end, then B will start, it will end, and then C will start, it will end. Okay, this is pretty simple. But if I want to run them parallelly, I can also run them parallelly. I can tell TestNG over here parallel equals to tests. If this is my suite, my sample suite, and if I write over here parallel equals to tests, then all the 3 test cases will be invoked parallelly. If I run this, you see that starting ABC, and after a delay of 5 seconds, it ends. The order is, a little jumbled up. You cannot predict the order. When I run it again, you see that starting BAC. So B is invoked a fraction of a second before A. Okay. So it runs like this. Are you observing the difference? In the previous run, A was starting, A was ending, B was starting, B was ending, C was starting, C was ending. Over here, all 3 of them are starting and all 3 of them are ending. Okay. So if you want to run the test cases parallelly, you can use this command. Then what is the use of grid? I told you that Selenium grid can run the test cases parallelly. Over here I have got 3 test cases. All the 3 test cases I invoke parallelly. I can run them. The thing is, if you want to run the test cases parallelly on a single machine, on my own machine, I can use this. But if I want to run it parallelly on multiple systems, then I will have to use the grid setup. Okay, right. So your TestNG, what it will do is that it will send all the test cases parallelly to the hub. All the test cases will hit the hub. Hub will decide which test case to redirect to which node. You don't have any control over that. Okay, TestNG will send all the test cases parallelly. Okay, Dhruv, I'm not. You'll come to know. You'll come to know when I teach you actually grid. But I'm just telling you the concept right now. Okay, that TestNG will actually send all the test cases parallelly to the grid, and the hub of the grid will decide which node to allocate to the test cases. If you just want to execute the test cases parallelly on a single machine, then you don't need Selenium Grid. You just keep parallel equal to tests over here. You will run, but it is not recommended to run on a single machine. Okay, right. So that is what, Amandeep, you cannot expect the result to be the same order. Okay, right. It's a fraction of a second. You know, it's threading. You cannot expect. Uh, you cannot just do it directly. Okay, right. So I hope you understood the point. Right. Okay. So this was my basic aim today, to give you an overview of installing TestNG and all everything. Tomorrow in the next part I will talk about parameterizing the test cases, also generating various reports, and I will also talk about a tool known as Ant. Okay, right.